If you love someone who has a substance use disorder or other addiction or is a narcissist, this may help you. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, and addiction runs very deep in my family, on my mother's side of the family and my father's. I spent most of my life, about 26 years and more, not taking good care of myself and being the family martyr because I didn't understand the importance of setting boundaries. And even when I did understand the importance of setting boundaries, I didn't know how to go about setting them. Fortunately, since then, I've learned how to set boundaries, and now they're an important part of my life. Here are 3 ways to set boundaries effectively. Number 1, acknowledge and accept the fact that your only job in life is to take good care of you. That's it, not anyone else, and that's a hard thing for people like us to accept because we spent our whole lives taking care of other people. Truly recognizing the fact that your only job is to take good care of yourself will really help guide decision making. You'll look at things differently. You'll say, is this truly good for me? And when the answer is no, you know that you have to set that boundary. Now, this seems pretty simple to people who haven't maybe experienced anything like this, but I have found that saying aloud that my only job in life is to take good care of me, to make sure that I am healthy and safe and that I have serenity, helps me set those boundaries and make decisions that ultimately will help me continue to build this life that I want and deserve. And 2, recognize and accept that boundary setting may feel very wrong, even though it's right for you. So an example in my life is when my father passed away suddenly, and I completely lost everything that I had learned about codependency, and it was like I erased all of the progress I had made. I relapsed in my healing and recovery from being an adult child of an alcoholic. I promptly moved out of my home. Like 3 weeks after my father's death, I was back in my parents' home because I felt the extreme responsibility for my sister, who was finishing her senior year of high school, and for keeping my mother alive. I felt that it was my duty and that I needed to just drop everything to be there for them. Once I moved in, my mother was very deep in grief from losing my father, and her alcoholism just worsened. I mean, she really plummeted into a terrible spot. So for 3 months that my sister and I lived there with her, it was hell. We didn't sleep or eat. My mother was drunk basically 24/7, and no matter what I did, just like I tried my whole life, I couldn't get her to stop. I couldn't get her to go to a therapist, to a counselor. She just didn't want to accept help. And it was horribly painful and frustrating and terrifying for me because I was sure she was going to burn down the house, that she was going to somehow die herself, that she was going to cause harm unto others. It was horrible. So I went to work like a zombie. I wasn't sleeping or eating. I was not living. My sister was not living. So finally, after 3 months, I realized, really for mostly the benefit of my sister, that we needed to get out of there. And so we packed up everything and moved out, and it felt horrible. I felt like I was abandoning a sick child because my role had been reversed, and I was the mother and she was the daughter. And I remember how difficult it was for me packing up the last remaining items and putting them into my trunk, and I put my cat and my dog in the back seat, and I was backing out of the driveway and just sobbing. It was so painful. It felt like I was abandoning a sick child, and you can imagine how that would feel. And the vision of my mother like waving from the porch is, I will never forget that. It felt so wrong, even though I knew it was the right thing to do for my sister and me. I didn't realize that it was absolutely the right thing to do for my mother. And so very soon after that, I realized that what I had done was save my mother's life and save my life and my sister's life. It was the best thing that I could have ever done for all of us, yet it felt so wrong. After we moved out, my mother, for the first time, not having my father or me to pick up the pieces and keep everything running, had to be an adult and take care of herself. And she got a full-time job, and while she was still drinking every day and not getting help for her addiction, she took action as an adult and did better than I could have ever dreamed her doing on her own. And that's all because I stepped out of the picture and let her live. And my sister and I slowly began healing from all of that and from the loss of our father, and thinking more clearly and taking better care of ourselves. Setting boundaries is like clearing the fog. Once you set them, you start to think more clearly, more rationally, and more in line with what is going to help you achieve your goals and what you really deserve in this life. And 3, another important part of setting boundaries is being consistent and sticking to those boundaries that you set, even when it feels difficult or that you're doing the wrong thing. So after my sister and I moved out of the house, I was, of course, burdened by a tremendous amount of guilt. I felt like I had abandoned my mother. So I was taking phone calls from her at night when she was drunk because I was worried about what would happen to her. And it caused me so much anxiety and pain, and it just didn't do any good because she was drunk. So I set a very clear boundary. I told my mother when she was sober that my sister and I would not take her phone calls, would not speak to her when she had been drinking. And that was for the benefit of her and for us, since it caused so much anger and resentment and fear and anxiety. And for 3 weeks straight, my mother continued to call at night. She'd wake me up late at night. I would be rattled by realizing how drunk she was, listening to her voicemail messages. And then finally, after 3 weeks, she accepted the boundary and stopped calling. And almost overnight, our relationship began improving because I didn't have that resentment and anger about the phone calls that occurred the night before, so we could have much healthier, pleasant check-in conversations when she was sober. And how do you know when to set boundaries? If you are truly living by the fact that your only job is to take good care of you and that you are responsible for ensuring that you are healthy and safe and have serenity, then the guidelines that are boundaries become very clear. Your path becomes illuminated as your mind clears and as you start to recognize all that you've been through and all that you need to do to heal. And when you have difficult decisions to make in support of these boundaries that you've set, as difficult as they may be, you have to remind yourself that it's all in support of the life that you want and deserve. I hope you are so well in your journey today and that you are actively building the life that you want and deserve.